Hello, you're very welcome to episode 1 of the Rossie GA podcast in association with Shannonside FM. I'm Darragh O'Connor. I'm going to be joined by two former Roscommon players for this week's episode. Conor Devaney and Cathal Cregg will be joining me to look ahead to this weekend's Roscommon Senior Football Final between Roscommon Gaels and Padraig Pearses. Okay, we're here in studio now with Cathal Cregg and Conor Devaney, looking ahead to this weekend's senior football final between Roscommon Gaels and Padraig Pearses. Lads, you're very welcome. To start off with, both of you are still on the go in the club championship. Cathal, you're with Western Gaels. Conor, you dipped your toe into management as well with Kilbride this year. I suppose, Cathal, starting yourself, to stay up with Western Gaels to secure senior status, was that a goal of yours? I suppose, are you at that level now where you want to maintain the status, or are you looking, beyond that? Is that one of the first check on the checklist?
Yeah, look, at one of the first things is stay senior league and senior championship. That was our fourth year in relegation trouble, I suppose. And look, we are aiming to try and get to quarter final and beyond if you can. We lost 2 games by a point to the 2 teams that ended up in the semi-final, but we just need to try and get out of that relegation trouble if we can, I suppose. But look, there's some younger players coming through, we're trying to balance that. We obviously have a few older lads, so just trying to get the balance that get the younger lads through and let the rest of us stay at home for a while, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, do you look at the Michael Glavies that you would have played against in the group, and maybe would have seen yourselves at a similar level? Like, they were within a few minutes, they were 3 points up against the Gaels in that semi-final. Like, although you might be saying you're down towards the bottom, is an example like that say you maybe aren't as far away as you think sometimes? Yeah,
look, we were close, and the same with Foley, so they just got the winner in extra time as well. We, I suppose, coming towards the end of the Glavies game, we were pushing on. We won the last, we just got a very bad start in that game. I think we won the last 40 minutes of it hands down, but look, ultimately we didn't get there. We were kind of similar last year. We drew a game in the group and lost one by a point as well, so not a million miles away, but still not there either. So you end up where you deserve, I suppose.
Yeah. Conor, I was obviously in with you with Kilbride. We stayed up as well, obviously intermediate level. It's tricky at the moment, I suppose, that level of players turnover that we've seen in our own club, and it does happen time to time in clubs where you see lads travel and retire and whatnot. So I suppose no more than probably Western Gaels' first target is to stay up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the beginning of the year, everyone would have said Kilbride would have been possibly the favourites to go down this year. Luckily for us, that didn't happen, but they would have also said, in order to stay up, we have to win one group game. And luckily, we did win the one group game, and then even more fortunately, we got a bye into a quarter final, I suppose. So, although everyone more or less knew we didn't really have much of a chance in a quarter final, we got there, we survived. That was the goal. Externally, we would have been one of the favourites to go down, so it was great to stay up considering the tough year we've had with losses of life, unfortunately, and losses of players going away. It's been tricky, so it's just great to stay up. I know we went down in junior league, but I think there was a lot of experimenting and things like that, and it may be no harm at all to be in junior league for a club like us, because I think we played 22 games this year, including challenges, and we lost 20 of them. So maybe I'm being too optimistic, but we might win a few games in junior league, and that might be actually good for lads to get that feeling of winning and scoring more again.
Yeah, for both of you, how do you see the current state of club football in Roscommon? We'll probably touch on the rule changes or proposed rule changes later on, but in terms of the standards, having played in it, Colin, might start with yourself at the senior level. How do you think the game is in Roscommon at the moment?
I think it's quite healthy. I think senior league and senior championship in Roscommon is very competitive. We play challenges out from in other counties, and we'd be very competitive in them, and then maybe struggle more so when we come into the county. You have 2 teams in Pearses and Bridges in the county that, obviously Bridges won Conor last year. You'd say Pearses are probably one of the favourites now to go on and win that, and whoever comes out of it will give it a good crack. So I think the state of football is in very good shape. You even see intermediate football at the minute. Like Strokes very strong, Elfin very strong, Rogue pushing, Elfin strong too, and they're after losing the last two intermediates. So I think overall it's strong across the board.
Yeah, I agree. That intermediate final actually is probably going to be a better game of football than the Pearses Roscommon Gaels, just the way the team's set up. Unfortunately for us, we got to see Elfin at their best, and they are outrageously strong in every aspect of that word. Like, physically strong, they can mix it up, they can put long balls into Frankie and Finton, who are still absolutely on top of their game, and Strokes, who have been there, done that in finals. So that's going to be a brilliant game. In terms of the senior, I would have thought Bridges were going to walk it. So I agree with Cathal. It's actually healthier than I thought as well, because Pearses kind of surprised me with how good they are. And Roscommon Gaels getting to a final is a surprise because they haven't got there in a while. But with Mark Dowd at the helm and his record with clubs around the place, Balladreen, Strokes, now the Gaels, they have every chance against Pearses. Yeah,
and we'll touch on the game now. Mark Dowd is in with the Gaels for the first year. You would have both worked with him with the county team with Anthony Cunningham. Conor, what does he bring, I suppose, to a setup? He seems to have obviously got a tune out of the Gaels anyway straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in terms of coaching, I suppose, and another coach that was in a semi-final you mentioned there with Clavy's Ian Daly, I would have put Mark Dowd and Ian Daly as two of the best coaches I've had over the years at Roscommon, and it's absolutely no surprise given his club record that he's in a final again. He brings just complete dedication to it, first of all, but a knowledge of the game and a willingness for the players to take responsibility as well, in terms of tactically, in terms of how they're going to set up against Pearses. Maybe they'll talk through everything. Every detail will be covered with Mark Dowd. It's absolutely, that I can be sure of. They will give it their all in terms of detail. Everything about Pearses will be studied. They'll have men to pick up Paul Carey, they'll have men to pick up Larkin Daly, Conor Harley, whoever it might be, and they'll all be assigned their duties. Whether it comes off or not may not be down to Mark Dowd, but he'll have his side of things definitely covered, and that's what makes him a very good coach.
Yeah, Cathal, he obviously has pedigree at underage level as well. He would have been in with Roscommon teams, and I suppose when you look at the Gaels team, it's a nice mix of maybe youth and experience there. And I suppose to throw in maybe the likes of John McGuinness for an example, I think he's playing minor football this year for the Gaels. Not afraid to throw him in, so I suppose he's going with the mantra, I suppose, if you're good enough, you're old enough. Yeah,
definitely. And speaking of John McGuinness, he was very good in the quarter-final and very good the last day as well. He I suppose, unfortunately for him, played in the minor one division one final, and they lost that one. But the two showings I've seen of him in them two games, he was really good. Not the biggest player in the world, but he's very brave. Got two scores, very important scores. The last day, particularly one in the second half. A very good team player too, I'd say. Does an awful lot of work, unseen work, tracking back, for his age, and very good on the ball. There was a pivotal moment the last day, I think it was for the goal, where he could have turned and taken the shot. He took the extra step and put it into Galooly, and they got the score from it. So and then probably going to the other end, John McManus was really good. Yeah. So he's using both sides. John was out from Tim Lamb. He was probably their best player the last day. So
yeah, just for that, I think that half back line for Roscommon Gaels, if they are to win the game, that will be the win of the game. That's an excellent half back line. John McManus on top of his game, brilliant player, can do anything athletically. Tim and Sen and Lamb either side, it's a really good half back line, and that's going to be a launch pad for the Gaels to win the game if they do that.
Yeah, and it was the line that got them back into the semi-final last day with 5 minutes to go. It looked like they were gone. They were 4 points down, and Tim Lamb got 2 points. John drove forward a few times, and they pulled it out of the bag to get the draw, and ultimately it was Tim Lamb and John McManus again their fitness levels were head and shoulders above everyone else in the field. Absolutely.
Yeah, is it maybe the experience of Pearses? Obviously, the 2019 final, they bet the Gaels by a goal in that one. Look, he would have, again, I refer back to, he played with the three Daly lads. Someone said to me they're great to have on your team, but I tell you, when they're not on your team, you don't want to be coming up against them. Is it that just maybe they just have that switch on the field that they just know how to win, basically?
Yeah, as you said, it's experience. The three of them plus many others on that team, they just do know how to win games. They know how to, if there's 10 minutes left and they're a point up, they're probably going to win that game, because they will slow that game down so much, frustrate Roscommon Gaels, foul up high up the pitch, start a bit of a row. Ronan Daly will niggle at someone's ankles and someone will hit out, and it'll be another minute gone by. Then another minute goes by. Next thing, you're 8 minutes gone by and you haven't scored. You haven't even got a chance. They just know how to win. That's why, look, they're probably going to go in favourites, because they just have that know-how at county level, but definitely at club level, collectively as a team with the Dailies and everybody else thrown in. They just know how to do it.
They have a lot of quality all over the field as well. And like Niall Daly there is very steady player. Like, he wasn't playing last year with them, and you could probably note in them. He's not going to be probably maybe around the field like the Dailies will be, but he'll be setting everything up. The way they're defensively set up is, he organises all that, and then put David Murray and Mark Richardson in on top of that defensively. But even the younger lads there, like, Keelan Keogh, Harley, Conor Ryan, they're younger, very physical players that mould into that team and the way that they play, and they get a stranglehold on games. Very hard for teams to play against them.
Yeah, you touched on Niall Daly there. He's probably been one of Roscommon's most consistent players, you'd have to say, over the last decade. And I think he's even towards the top of the appearance. I don't know, is he ahead of both in the appearance standings? And it'll be interesting to see, does he actually give us another year with the county, because he's been, this year it felt like maybe the first year where he was just maybe on the bench and bit part player. To have that sort of level of experience and know how to win, but also that bit of quality, it's crucial for Pearses. And like, if you're Davy Burke, you'll want Niall Daly in your squad again next year if all possible.
Look, in most games, and you'll see at the weekend, he'll probably pop up and get one of his trademark scores from the right hand side where he curls them over. Nobody else can get those scores. He just seems to be able to do them, but he does them at crucial moments and he makes them look easy. That's where I think he's actually best as a footballer. You could be level in the middle of a game and you really need a point, and next thing Niall Daly will come up that right wing and you know what he's going to do, but you're not going to be able to stop him, and he more than likely will score. So I think that's where he's best. You'll see him probably do that at some stage at the weekend, and that's where he has been brilliant for Roscommon. So from his point of view, I don't see why he wouldn't play again. He's featured a lot this year. Why wouldn't you play again? I don't know why not.
Yeah, no, he definitely should be in a Roscommon team, in my opinion, with the way he's playing. Like, he's having a phenomenal club championship. He's carrying a knock, I know, and that's probably one of the things with Pearses as well, is that a lot of the main players are probably a bit more rested than they normally would be. Niall normally would have a lot more football played this year. Conor has been away, he was travelling, probably just getting into a stride now. Ronan, due to injuries, hasn't played a lot, and Davy Murray was out with injuries, only just back the last day. So, like, a lot of, with the new schedule, a lot of inter-county players are flogged, but they're actually coming, humming along at a good stage for them. And I suppose it's probably reflective of how good Pearses have been, is that, like, they bet Bridget's more or less without Niall. He came on late on that game. That's quite impressive, given he has been their best player. He probably was their best player again the last day in the semi-final. Yeah,
there's opportunity knocks, probably maybe more so for the Gaels that haven't done as Pearses have the couple of county titles and a Connacht in the bag. It's just maybe the fact that Bridget's are out of the equation now. There was no Ben O'Carroll there for them in that Pearses game. Again, you wonder if he was there, would have accounted for the difference. So is this even... Of course, a county final's big for both teams, but even for the Gaels, to have Bridget's out of the equation, you're in the final now. Is this even a bigger opportunity for them?
I think it is, yeah. I think it is. I think Roscommon Gaels won't have any fear going into this final, especially, as I mentioned earlier, with Mark Dowd at the helm. So I think they'll be confident. I think if their players, some of the players who haven't really been fully on song, maybe Peter Galooly and Cian Connolly, if they really show up, they possibly have an even better forward line than Pearses. So if they can show up and score 2 points, 3 points each, I think you'll have a game on their hands, definitely.
Yeah, they like Roscommon Gaels are probably where Pearses were around 2019 when they won it. Like, there were a lot of good younger players coming, and there's more. They've been in the last 4 minor Division 1 finals, and if they can get across the line now, I think you'll see a good few more in the bag, and they'll get confidence from it and go on and challenge Bridget's. But if they don't win it, they're probably back to the pack, because there's a number of teams after Bridget's and Pearses challenging, So I think it's a huge game for them.
Is it the psychological factor? I know it's talked about a lot, and the Gaels probably have a bit of scars. I was talking to Mark Dowd last week that possibly in their advantage that a lot of these, I suppose, younger players weren't a part of that team in 2019. They haven't experienced a county final, so you would think that like sometimes your first final is the best one to play and that you haven't experienced, you know, a loss, we'll say, in a final before.
I think that's possible, but the only difficulty with that is you're up against Pearses with any amount of experience, know-how, every trick in the book, know how to play defensively, can counter-attack brilliantly, just know how to do it. So I know what you're saying. I think I agree with it to an extent. You're raw, you just want to go out and play and enjoy it, and that could well work. But Pearses are just so experienced in these type of games, and they will shut a lot of those Roscommon Gaels players down. They normally do. So Roscommon Gaels are going to have to score at every single opportunity they get. Like Keane is going to have to score every shot he gets. Peter Galooly is, Richard Walsh is, Ryan Conor, who was brilliant early in the game the last day, and it's great to see him playing brilliantly because I watched him in school going through the years, and he has outrageous potential. So if he can fulfil that potential, it would be great to see, and would probably be a player that would get Roscommon Gaels over the line.
It's probably, Conor mentioned there, in terms of the need to score everything. They've been very wasteful in both the quarter final and the semi final. Against Boyle, they only ended up winning that game by about 3 points, but they should have won it by, I'd say, 10 points. You know, they missed an awful lot, particularly in the first half, and the last day as well. Like even up to the 20 minutes they were in control, they should have been 7 or 8 points up. Instead, they gave away the soft goal, and Glavies were back level in the game. That'd be the one fear I would have for Roscommon Gaels. They need to improve that.
And it's just one other thing, like we keep mentioning Pearses' experience and maybe Roscommon Gaels youth, but there's any amount of experience in that team. Look at Cathal, John McManus, Mark Healy. How long has he been around playing brilliant football? Scott Oates, you know, Keane Connolly. Like inter-county experience, loads of years playing club championship. There's any amount of experience there as well.
The thing about Mark Healy was, and I was chatting to him last week as well, that I think 2019 he was travelling back and forth. He's had a full year now, I suppose, training away with the Gaels, and you can probably see it on the pitch. I suppose that's the other thing about club football. It doesn't always work. It's obviously you want your best players playing, and if you can get them back when possible.
Yeah, and it hasn't always worked out for Mark Healy. Unfortunately, injuries. He's been troubled by injuries since he's been very young, different things. So like a year injury free, you can really see how good a footballer he is. He always has been, but he hasn't showcased it because of injuries and travel, as you said, over and back. So it's great to see that too.
Yeah, they're formidable around the middle. Mark Purcell, I've been impressed with him. I wouldn't have seen a lot of him up until the quarter final. You know, big man, can play, can strike balls off the ground. He's good nerve too, because he missed 2 chances early on from the ground, and he nailed them. Then the one to bring them within a point or equalise it. The last day was a serious strike, and he scored one in extra time as well. So they're formidable.
Up front, they're similar age. I think they were playing underage together as well for Roscommon. Peter Galooly, Paul Carey, both number 14 on their back the last day. Would these be 2 players that they haven't really had a look in at senior county level? Would these 2 players be maybe looking at catching the eye of Davy Burke on Sunday? Obviously they'll be concentrating on the win first and foremost, and Davy Burke would have been seeing them in the club championship anyways, but they're probably at a crossroads now where maybe 24, 25, if you're going to break onto a senior panel, maybe now or never, would you be thinking?
Yeah, well, I think they'll be in there on that panel, and I think they'll have to feature in some of the league games. I think for Roscommon in general in that league, I think there has to be some experimentation in that league. I think it's a time for Roscommon to introduce maybe 5, 6, 7 players in that league. I think they're good enough to win your 4 or 5 games and stay in Division 2. You don't have to put out your, we'll say, so-called strongest team in every game and really challenge and win. You'll probably win your 3, 4 or 5 games while also trying to build a new team, maybe a new panel, with introducing 5 or 6 players every year for the next 5 years. I would say is what Roscommon nearly need to do at this stage, and they will be 2 that surely have to feature at some stage. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think they both have the ability, there's no doubt about that. Probably consistency over the last few years probably has been for various reasons. I know Peter has had a lot of injuries and various stuff, but like Paul, when he plays well, like Pearses really tick. Like the last time they went on a run, he was really good. He was really good in the quarter final. Like remember the Connacht final? I think it was in Ballina. He was very good against Matt Moore.
Brilliant. Yep.
So he's at a top level too. So I suppose just them maybe getting the break and playing well in some of the Division 2 games and maybe getting a couple of games back to back and get a bit of confidence. But I'd say they'll definitely be on Davy Burke's list of players to try out.
Yeah, well, hopefully we see a great final and players stepping up. And just touching on the Gaels again against Glavies, I think Col, you were there at it. Realistically, if you're going to concede the 3 goals that they conceded against Glavies, you're not going to beat Pearses. In all honesty, are you?
No, definitely not. Not if you're conceding that and not scoring up the other end. Their scoring and their conceding has been very up and down in games.
Yeah.
They've scored like 2-15 and then scored 1-9, and they've conceded no goals and then they've conceded 3 goals. They've been a bit kamikaze in that. Which is probably unlike a team that Mark Dowd would be with, But look at it, that's something they'll definitely be working on and have to rectify to be in with any chance of beating Pearses.
Finally, how do you both see this game shaping up? Are we going to see a dogfight? Hopefully we see an open game, but I think a game with Pearses, I'm just thinking Pearses in a final, and we refer to the Dailies and Davy Murray and all that experience. Will this be one that Pearses might just grind out, maybe 10-9 or something?
I think it's possible, yeah, but I still think you're going to see, because of the footballers that are on the pitch on both teams, I still think you're going to see some brilliant scores. Like even if it's 10-9, you're going to see 7 or 8 excellent scores on either side. So I think it might be tight, it might be cagey. That's the way Pearses will play it. But I still think with the amount of brilliant players on the pitch, you're surely going to see some excellent scores. It'll be worth watching, definitely. Which way will it go? I don't know. In some ways you'd like to see Roscommon Gaels winning it and maybe push on as a third big team, we'll say, in Roscommon, or fourth if you include Clanagale. And I think I agree with Cathal that if they were to win it, they would definitely be involved in semi-finals and finals in the coming years, definitely. So hard to see past Pearses, but I think Roscommon Gaels could be very close.
Yeah, I'd agree. I find it hard to see past Pearses just because of the way they play. I think they'll just control the game, bring it to their tempo. In the quarter-final, semi-final, Roscommon Gaels looked really good when they had their set structure. You could see the work that Mark Dowd was doing with them. But the 10-minute period, even though they dominated most of that game, the 10-minute period where Boyle took them out of that, they looked very average. And the same after 20 minutes the last day. For probably 20 minutes after that, Glavies made them look very ordinary. And I just don't think Pearses will allow them get their setup and structure on the game.
Touching on what you said, Conor, as well, in a general view of Roscommon, you were mentioning there that we need to be seeing maybe more of an experimental team in Division 2. Have we seen enough players brought through, I suppose, maybe the last 2 or 3 years? I know Niall Higgins is one that stands out, maybe last year that made a breakthrough. He's been in and around the panel a bit. Dylan Rowan maybe the year before that. Have we seen maybe enough of experimenting, or have we kind of just stayed to what we know?
I think generally the players that are good enough in Roscommon tend to end up on the Roscommon panel. Like most people in the county would be able to pick our 24, 25 best players in any given year, to be fair. I think they would, and they're most of the time they are there, unless they're travelling like Kieran Murtha or something like that. They are going to be there. So like you can pick out Paul Carey and Peter Galooly, who've already been involved anyways, and will probably be thereabouts again. And I suppose what I'm saying about Division 2 is I think Roscommon team now should be confident enough and good enough to win 4 or 5 games without completely putting out their best team and really going for every game, which they have to do in Division 1, which is probably why you've only seen your Dylan Moran, Niall Higgins. You can't, it's very difficult in Division 1 if you want to win 3 games. Well, sometimes you need to win 4 or 5 to stay up. It's very hard to bring in players, but I think it might be better for us. I know a lot of people say this and it might be just something to say, but I think it might be better if we just win our 4 or 5 games, introduce 3 or 4 players this year, 3 or 4 the following year, and if you were to stay in Division 2, it might just work out for the better longer term for Roscommon if that was the case.
Yeah, I agree with Conor. Like the majority of the players, that the best players are playing generally. I think the biggest probably concern of David Burks will be getting Kieran Murtha, Keane McKeown and Conor Daly back. Like that's where your big,
I don't think
big improvements.
Do people realise how big a loss Kieran Murtha is? Like he's like probably the best player I've played with. Like he just makes everything happen. Like it's no. There's a reason why other players don't play as well when he's not there. It's because he's not there. He sets up everything. He assists everything.
It's not just the scoring.
No, he does. He does so much on the pitch. His ball winning ability. If you're in the half back line, you can kick a ball to Kieran Murtha. He'll just win it. Yeah. He'll just win it, and he'll turn and he'll pass it, and then you have Enda Smith on the run scoring. So things dry up when Kieran Murtha isn't there. So they need him big time.
Yeah, and like Conor Daly then on a defensive point of view, like we haven't the cover to be not having a player of his ability in the squad. Look, there'll be lots. I'm sure there'll be lots of the under 21s or the under 20s from last year. But even for any of them, it's a big step up to play senior intercounty, like pace wise, conditioning wise, everything. There's a lot of good players there, so it might be another year or two before they're there. I think maybe the likes of Darragh O'Connor and Tim Lamb, they'll get their chance, and probably Kenny and Keogh and them lads that have been around the squad, you could see them kicking on. They're probably the lads that Conor's on about that needs a bit of game time. Give them Division 2 and give them 4 or 5 games, not just 40 minutes and then pull them and another 40 minutes. Like you need games. You'll make mistakes at that level. You're not just going to go in and blow the thing open. Like it's just a reality. But I suppose from David Burke's point of view as well is that you can't go down either. Like the divisions are very tight. Like you have to make sure you stay up, because we're obviously in Division 2 now. If you go for Division 3, you're not going. You could end up in Tailteann Cup.
That's true. Yeah.
Especially with the draw at the weekend, pulling. You'd assume we beat London, Galway in the next game. That's a very, very tough game. You might not make a Connacht final to be sure of a Tailteann Cup. So. He'll be looking at that too. Like
that's true. Yeah.
But if you were the likes of Kieran Murtha, and look, you were involved in county panels, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, recent enough. If you were Kieran Murtha, is it enjoyable enough to I suppose be away for a year and then come back into it? Maybe at the age he is, towards the maybe the end of his inter-county years, is inter-county football and the training and the level of requirement to play that, is it enjoyable enough to come back in at the moment?
I think it's even more enjoyable when you're away actually and you come back in. That's when it's most enjoyable. So if he was to rejoin this year, I think he'd actually find that it's more enjoyable. And then of course with the introduction of the new rules, Kieran Murtha notoriously he'd be getting 2-pointers for fun sometimes, So and we don't have not many counties have too many players like that. Like other counties are looking at their goalkeepers probably to get these 2-pointers. We've Kieran Murtha, Enda Smith, a few others. So I think it's going to be enjoyable. If he was one of those players that was kept up as a top 3 that has to stay up high up the pitch, that's enjoyable. So I think if I was him, and knowing how good he is, I'd be going back in there to experiment with these rules. Definitely, it would be enjoyable.
Yeah, look at it when you're in that. I suppose the bubble or whatever you want to call it. It's a very enjoyable lifestyle, especially when you're into football on that. It's probably hard to get back into it at the start. And I took a year out. It can be hard, if you're. It's a lot of it is a mindset too. So, but look at Kieran, will have no bother doing that. So he probably have to know he's at the age. If he takes another year out, that's probably it inter-county wise for him. So but hopefully he'll make the right decision.
Well, for our sake, hopefully. Touching on the rule changes or proposed rule changes as well. Look, you were both playing club football, and as I said, you've been playing county football only 2 or 3 years ago. And I was just saying, as enjoyable to be in the setup, watching from afar and actually playing club football. Is football in the games enjoyable at the moment? We watched a couple of club games last weekend. I think the Derry semi-final was an RT, was a poor game. There was a Clare football, I don't know, the Clare football example in his time, and I think scored only 2 points, and there was a fella doing keepy up, he's in the middle of in the pitch, and it was kind of a joke. So they're proposing these rule changes to enhance the game. Is it enjoyable at the moment to play in and watch?
I think it's always enjoyable to play because there's different challenges when you're playing. I understand from the point of view of a spectator but it's very different. The two things are very different. I think it's always enjoyable to play because, let's just say you were a wing back, you want to get better of your man, you want to get forward, you might get a point. No matter what way the game is going, no matter what the tactics are, you do that, you're kind of enjoying yourself. I'd say in general with the rules, I wouldn't have been initially in favour of changing any rule. I would have been more in favour of actually being stricter on some of the rules that are already in existence. For example, the 4 steps. Like, people say the art of one-on-one defending is gone. It's gone because you can't coach it. Because if I coach you to mark someone and make them over carry the ball, and next thing you see games on TV where there's 13 steps and then a goal, of course you're going to have cover then, 2 players, 3 players back to help you out because you can't defend. You've done your job and then he takes another 4 steps. So I think if there was consistency with the existing rules, the game would actually change anyways. And also, sports evolve. Like, it wasn't that long ago the game was totally different. I think in 5 years' time, if you were to leave the game without changing any rules, it would change for the better anyways, because teams become all the same, and then a different manager will change his style, more attacking, more fluid style, and then they'll all copy that. It's like soccer across the water. Pep Guardiola, they all do that. Now it's already beginning to change to a different style. You look at teams in Sweden, Fluminense in South America, Malmo in Sweden, they're playing a totally different style now. That would happen in Gaelic, but people watching Gaelic football seem to be a bit more impatient. And saying all that, I think the rules will actually change the game for the better. I think it will work and more enjoyable for the spectator and maybe different for the player.
Yeah, and I don't think all games are as bad as,
No.
everyone focuses in on the likes of the Clare one the weekend, and you'll see it go around the WhatsApp groups, but I'd have to say, look, the league games we played this year, the championship games, was none of them at anyways that level,
No.
The Derry game the weekend, that was a particularly poor example. It just happened to be. I was watching the Kerry semi-final yesterday, the Dingle East Kerry game. It was a brilliant game of football, loads of attacking football in it, penalty save. It was a very exciting game. So it's not all that bad.
Is it more of an issue at county level, the fact that there's just, it's heightened, it's more tactical than club level?
It's gone more tactical than it used to be. It used to be, even when I started playing, probably changed a bit when you started, it was, it was 15 on 15. It has gone from that now. It's 15 behind the ball. It's counter-attacking football. I think the goalkeeper has probably changed it a lot in terms of it's gone from a kick and catch game to a possession-based game. And I think that's the one rule the new rule that's coming in. I think if they just change that alone, I think it'd change the game, because it'd allow every team to push up. I played a challenge there a couple of weeks ago. One of the teams was in one of the county finals there yesterday, and did a good goalkeeper. I was playing full forward, and he was a good goalkeeper. Not to be fair to him, jeez, I was just chasing over and back, and I knew while going to him he wasn't going to lose the ball.
And you'll see if in the intermediate final, Elfin, that'll be a brilliant game of football, and also the Elfin goalkeeper Brady pushes up on the opposition kick out. So things like that are just Morgan, they're interesting. They're interesting to watch. And also I find it funny sometimes the spectators complain about Gaelic football over the course of a few years. The very same people will go out on Sunday and watch Man City against Liverpool for 90 minutes and see out a 0-0 draw, where Man City have the ball for half the game and Liverpool have the ball for half the game. There might be 8 shots on target. So I don't know, we have a better game.
They'll also laud games from the 80s and 90s, and if you look back at any of them games, they're terrible to watch. The game has
the skill level has improved vastly.
Yeah, the game's evolved an unbelievable amount.
Yeah, is it important? I mean, the goalkeeper there, to not block it, I suppose, that it is good to see involvements in the game, and that there's new tactical setups that goalkeepers are pressing up.
That will happen with the new rules as well. If they'd happen to come in for next year, I suppose we'll see after this weekend's games. But everyone will get used to them for a year or two, and then some, it was probably Jim McGuinness that started the current evolution. You'll have another Jim McGuinness that'll come in, a really deep thinker of the game, and he'll have a way around these rules, and they might have to be changed in 10 or 15 years time again. That's just the way things go.
So ahead of these games in Croke Park, obviously they're calling 7 core enhancements. We won't go through. It's been overdone. Is there one in particular that you want to come in? And I suppose the one that seems to be that everyone's cautious about is the 3 up and 3 down. Basically having keeping 3 men in each half of the field. Is that going to be the real stickler, that this could work in inter-county when you have linesmen and umpires and that monitoring it, but if you're at a club league game, we'll say, you know, with one referee, no help, it's going to be very hard to implement that at club level. So would that be, I suppose, the rule that the most eyes will be on? But it could have it'll have the greatest change.
It'll have the greatest change, I think, because what it does is it as Cathal said, it is now currently mostly a 15-on-15 game in one half. What that does immediately, if you include the goalkeeper, and probably you're not going to leave 3-on-3, you're probably going to have a sweeper. So it takes out 8 players, space-wise, that has to open up the game. And the second thing with the arc, the defending team will have to push out further, because if you're playing against someone like we mentioned earlier, Kieran Murtagh, you have to step out to that arc to stop him from shooting. So again, space. So you have 8 players less and you have the defence pushing out. So those two things alone will create oceans of space inside for little dink pass inside that we all like to see. So I think, yes, it'll cause arguments at club level. Was my foot over the line when he took that shot to get a 2-pointer to win a championship game, to get into a quarter final, and one foot is over the line and one foot is behind the line, and he swings it and the referee makes a call and there's no VAR or whatever there is, there's going to be rows, there's going to be calls for replays, there's going to be once you introduce a line,
it's tough. It's going to be tough on refs.
Very difficult.
Like it's a difficult job already. So that one is going to be. It'll be interesting to see when they do bring them in. They'll bring in some sort of change. Will it be just will it be inter-county? Will it be across the board? You know, will it be top to bottom, or will some rules like the 3 up, 3 down be just for inter-county? I suppose they'll just have to see that in the trial part of it. I suppose I'd be in favour. The goalie we mentioned already. I think the tap and go one is a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think the game will be played at some pace now with the out ball and that, and also the 2-metre kicking arc is, or the 2-point kicking arc is good. I'm not gone on the 4 points for a goal, to be honest. Just because I think, particularly in underage games, I think the stronger teams will pulverise a weaker team.
Well, I think there'll be more goals scored anyways now with the arc, because defending teams will have to push out to stop a 2-pointer, and that'll create space in behind. So there naturally will be more goals scored. So there's probably no need for the 4-pointer.
I suppose they'll say a free just on the edge of the 40-metre arc. Should it be only one less than scoring a goal? I think that's the knock-on effect that this 2-point arc is going to have. You have to maybe just increase the worth of a goal. Lastly, on the rules, and I think you touched on the goalkeeper there. Probably the greatest example was Roscommon in Croke Park that time against Dublin, where it kind of felt like piggy in the middle, where Dublin would be pushed up to an extent on it. It wasn't full, but they'd always have the spare man, Conor Carroll. And you can basically just do that for as long as you want. You know,
but in that case, that point was actually a brilliant point, because
it was
Roscommon purposefully. Dublin were sitting back, which we've seen teams that we've talked about, teams sitting back. What Roscommon did there by giving it back to Carroll, they deliberately drew Dublin out of their shell, and once it was 1-on-1 for a split second, Diarmuid Murtagh got the ball and ran down the middle, and took on his man then. So Roscommon actually did very well in that play, and I know people give out about it was the one that was cited as they held possession for however length of time, 3 or 4 minutes, but ultimately that was a way of getting Dublin out of their shell and breaking them down to get them 1-on-1. They knew if we get them 1-on-1 and give the ball to Diarmuid Murtagh, he can take on his man and didn't even overlap. So that was actually a very good point, despite it being cited.
There was a point to what they were at. You know,
there was actually.
Dublin had set up tactically, and Roscommon were trying to coax them out, which worked. Like, you know, as a manager, you'd be delighted with that.
Yeah.
Well, changing times ahead. Lads, thanks very much for joining me, and again, hopefully on Sunday, without these rule changes, we get a game to remember between the Gaels and Pearses.
Thank you.